This one's called The Taxi. It started like any normal night. I'd been out, just drinks with some mates from work, nothing heavy. I left around midnight. The streets outside were quiet. I checked my phone and the battery was on 9%. I hadn't really considered how I would get home, so I decided the best thing to do would be to call a cab. No sooner had I had that thought that a taxi pulled up alongside of me, almost like it was expecting me to be there. It wasn't a Merc or a Tesla. It was a proper black cab, boxy, old school style. No logo, no license number, just the taxi light glowing a dull amber. I opened up the back door and I got in. I noticed the driver was a big bloke, broad shoulders, wearing a long dark coat. I couldn't see much of his face, just a crooked nose and deep set eyes in the rear view. He didn't say anything. I told him my street name and he didn't reply. He just nodded, like he already knew, and then he began to drive. The first thing that fell off was the fare meter. I noticed it wasn't ticking up, it was counting down. It started on £17.60 and then I noticed it went down to £16 and then down to £15. This struck me as odd. So I said, "Mate, I think your meter's messed up." The driver didn't answer, just sat there silently, facing forward, driving. Then I noticed the GPS. There was no map, it was just static. And there was a flickering arrow spinning in place right in the center. As I looked out of the window, I noticed that the roads were empty. There were no people, no other cars, no lights, just silence, stillness. A deep, impenetrable black cloak seemed to close in on the taxi as we drove. I looked down at my phone and noticed that it had no signal. The battery was still on 9%. But what struck me as strange was the clock was still showing just after midnight. I swiped on the screen and noticed that it didn't work. I couldn't open any apps. It was like the phone had completely frozen on me. Typical, I thought to myself. When I looked back up, I looked out of the window and I felt sure we were going the wrong direction. "Hey mate, where are we going?" I asked the driver. He didn't look at me, just said in a gravelly voice, "The fare's been paid." "What?" I asked, but he didn't reply. And then we passed a turning I recognized, or I thought I did. But the buildings were wrong, distorted, like a memory half recalled. The city seemed to have warped. Shops that no longer existed, a petrol station that burned down years ago. There they all were, preserved. Something felt wrong. It was like I'd gone back in time. It looked like a version of London that had never moved on. The air inside the cab grew thick, heavy, like it didn't want me to breathe. And then the driver spoke again. "You lied, didn't you?" I froze. "What? What do you mean?" He glanced in the mirror, and he said, "You said you didn't know what happened to her." Who? Who? I asked. "What are you talking about?" "The girl. The one by the canal. Ellie." That's when my stomach dropped. I hadn't heard that name in years. I hadn't told anyone what happened. I hadn't told anyone ever. How could he know? Back in uni, there was this girl, Ellie. We were at a party. She was drunk and I was way worse. I left her outside to get some air, and she never came back. Everyone thought she had wandered off and fell in. There were rumours, police questions, but no charges, no proof. I said I didn't know anything. I lied. I pressed my hand against the car door. It didn't move. I tried to wind down the window, but it didn't move. None of the locks did. I yelled, I shouted, but the windows were like stone. No one heard. The city was gone. Now it was just road. Endless road. Dark trees on either side, bending inward, looming over us like they were watching over me. It was then that I saw them. Figures, standing on the sides of the road, not waving, not moving, just watching. Their faces blurred, their eyes hollow, like they'd forgotten who they used to be. Some were children. One looked like my brother, and another one looked like Ellie. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I turned to the driver in full panic mode. Scared, frightened. "Where the fuck are we?" I asked. But he just smiled and said, "The place between the last truth and the final lie." I said, "I want to get out. I want to get out now." And he replied, "You are." And then the cab slowed. And we reached a gate. Old, rusted, made of black iron. No buildings around, no path forward, just fog and firelight. The meter in the cab flashed one last time and showed 0. Fare collected. The driver turned to face me. His face had changed. Eyes were black and glowing, teeth too many and too sharp, skin cracked like dried earth. He said, "This is where we drop you off." And then the door opened all on its own. I didn't walk out. I was pulled, dragged by something unseen, into the dark, into the heat, into the silence that isn't really silence at all. No one ever saw me again. But sometimes, late at night, a black cab appears on back roads. No license, no friendly driver photo. Just the word taxi glowing dimly, and a meter that counts backwards. So, if you ever find yourself alone and a cab pulls up without you calling it, don't get in, no matter how cold or tired you are, because some drivers don't take you home. They take you back.